We are ready for the next panel discussion, and I can tell you that our experts, I know this, are at the starting line. They are ready to dive into next topic, and we are going to talk about collaboration which drives health innovation. And leading discussion is Claire Skentelbery, director. Please welcome her on stage. Director General of Europa Bio, Chair of International Council of Biotechnology Associations, and as well governing board member of Innovative Health Initiative. I don't know how do you do this usually on one breath. It's quite impossible, but she will of course speak with our experts across the Europe. So please welcome our expert, Professor Maciej Małecki, Jagiellonian University Medical College Vice Rector. Huge applause, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon already. Thierry Marschall, President and Secretary General at Avicenna Alliance. Good morning, good afternoon. We are looking for Andrew Smith, Head of External Relations at ELIXIR Europe. Hello. Good afternoon, and please welcome Magda Krakowiak, Director of once again, EIT Health, and this is a time for applause. And please welcome also Greco, President of the European Patients Forum. We are ready to start, so the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Is this on?
Yes.
Yes, that's perfect. So thank you very much for joining us today, and this is an incredibly important panel because, as you know, collaboration across skills, across sectors, across cultural backgrounds is literally where the magic happens in research. We each bring amazing technical capability. Well, I don't. But we bring technical capability together and you make amazing products and processes with the understanding that you need to take basic science through to making a difference for a patient. So this is a very important panel to have, but it's also something without repeating everything that everybody has said today, we come to this panel in a very different era now. This is a different time that we discuss, even from January this year. So we are at a time where there is huge global disruption, and it's not just the imposition of tariffs and the fiscal shocks that are coming into the system. It's the fundamental reshaping of what healthcare looks like, because what happens in the US impacts what happens everywhere. And in our global capacity, we are seeing impacts on innovative partnerships, we are seeing impacts on clinical trials, we are seeing impacts on patient access to medicines, not just in the US, but globally. So as we talk here, we are in a time where uncertainty is the key word that we have. Things change on a daily basis, and there is a strong need for intellectual leadership in key areas. And I very strongly believe that the EU must step into these areas and is best placed to do so. But I think this gives us a perfect opportunity to have this conversation linked to where Europe needs to go next. And I think that might be a slightly different conversation than we would have had even just a few months ago. But I do this from my position in Europa Bio, which is the industry association that represents innovative bioindustries. So this is biotech across all sectors, and we have seen it make a difference everywhere. We are very strongly involved in developing the Biotech Act, but we work with associations and colleagues across all sectors to make sure that biotech is visible and that it is applied and it can make a difference in multiple sectors. But luckily, I have the easy job here today. I just get to ask the questions, and these guys get to do the hard work. So we will start with a really short introduction from each of our panelists. So I start with you, Maciej.
My name is Maciej Małecki. I'm representing the Jagiellonian University Medical College here. I'm Vice Rector of the Jagiellonian University. This is the oldest academic institution in this country, founded 1364. I'm myself a physician. I work in the field of diabetes, and privately I'm also a patient with type 1 diabetes, so I have also this perspective.
Thank you. Thierry.
Oh, thank you, Claire. So I'm Thierry Marschall. Contrary to you, I'm a mechanical engineer by training. So I have different hats covering the different areas that you are mentioning. I'm first the Chief Technologist for Europe and Program Director for Healthcare at ANSYS, which is a large American company developing some software that you can use to design your car, for designing the plane or the train that you were using to come here, but also for healthcare application. So on top of that, I'm a e-health expert to the European Commission and a liaison officer to the ISO International Standard Organization. But I'm here as the President and Secretary General of the Avicenna Alliance, which is a global alliance of academic with a VPH institute represented by Liz Gegeris here, but also industry, regulators, patient organization, clinician, and so on. And the goal of this organization is to advocate for the regulation, sorry for the previous speaker, regulation and adoption of in silico method. By that I mean computer model, computational modeling and simulation, in order that we can accelerate medical innovation. And that especially in Europe, because Claire, I would disagree with you. It's not something that we must do. This is something that we will do quickly.
Thank you, Claire. So it's a privilege also for me to be here, so thanks to the organizers. I'm Andrew Smith. I'm head of the external relations team at ELIXIR Europe. ELIXIR is a research infrastructure, and essentially what we are doing is connecting and coordinating Europe's public data resources for life sciences. So we have 600 services that our partners across Europe run. They include databases, software and tools to analyze data, standards to make data fair, and also online training courses as well to help train bioinformaticians and data scientists. So that's really the role of ELIXIR. And what we see is that other academic and industry partners collaborate a lot and use those data and knowledge from the public resources. They innovate on top of it. And so that's my role in this panel. I'll give you some examples later on those collaborations of how industry and other partners have innovated on top of that public data. But in particular, in the context of the EU Life Science strategy, it's really great that there's a strong focus on data, digitalization, and AI, and also training and skills as well. So I think that's a really good starting point.
Perfect. Magda?
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Magda Krakowiak. I'm a director in the EIT Health Accelerator, meaning I'm on my daily line of work, I'm working with startups and I'm responsible for creating programs that will be supporting startup growth of startups across Europe. EIT, I'm not sure if it still requires an introduction. It's one of the instruments that the European Commission has set up back in 2008, where we have different knowledge innovation communities that are uniting hubs of innovation across Europe in specific topics. So I'm representing the one in health. We are a public-private partnership with over 100 partners, ranging the whole spectrum of life sciences, essentially, and healthcare, because our partners are healthcare systems, insurances, those are healthcare providers, including, let's say, academia, but also students and entrepreneurs. So very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Marco Greco. I'm the president of the European Patient Forum, and I'm also a patient myself with Crohn's disease since I was a teenager. Lawyer as a background. And leading APF means to coordinate 83 patients group all over Europe at European level and national platforms. Also, I've been appointed by the European Commission to serve before for 6 years in the PRAC and then 6 years in the management board of EMA representing patients, and that explains a bit my background and also my passion and interest for regulatory issues.
That's perfect. So we've had a really quick introduction. And what we're going to do now is a slightly deeper dive into each of the amazing collaborative worlds that we have, and then finish up with where Europe needs and will go next. So I'm going to start with our local champion, Maciej. Metabolic research is an absolute example of success from collaboration, as it's such a complex area. Can you talk us through how the multiple voices, including patients, pharma, research, how they've come to create such a successful approach to this complex area?
Thank you very much for asking this question, and I fully agree with you. The field of diabetes and metabolic diseases is a perfect example to show an enormous progress that has been done over the last 2-3 decades. And it is important to say that this could have happened only because there was a partnership, there was a collaboration, and there was also a competition between 3 key players: the patients, the pharmaceutical and technological companies, and the academic institutions. So let me first point to the involvement and participation of the patients. And it is, I would like to give as an example monitoring of glucose. I remember in the 90s, I spent a few years in the States, and the patients' organizations were extremely vocal. They were very active in demanding continuous glucose monitoring. They were saying glucometers are not enough for us. Our children are experiencing very severe hypoglycemic episodes. We cannot sleep normal. We cannot sleep at night. This should stop. We need a progress. And they were putting a pressure on the technological companies, on the academic institutions, also on NIH. And finally, I think that mostly due to this pressure, in a period of 10 years, continuous glucose monitoring systems appeared on the global market, and it was a key progress in monitoring and treatment of millions of patients worldwide, including obviously Europe. But let me also point to the more direct involvement of the patients. So I said I am a patient with type 1 diabetes, and I am one of thousands who are using hybrid pumps. This is a special construction. So I have a pump, I have a continuous glucose monitoring system, and I have also a cellular phone. And this is a brain of this, because in this cellular phone, there is an algorithm, there is an application. And let me tell you that patients themselves, they created one of the algorithms, and many patients use so-called do-it-yourself programs, applications, because they demanded the progress to be faster that could have been provided by technological companies and academic institutions. Obviously, academic institutions also develop their own applications. For example, Cambridge and Professor Hovorka's group were very successful. Finally, there are also programs developed by the technological companies, for example, Medtronic. So this creates an unusual environment of crosstalk between different partners. And I think that this speeds up the progress. Obviously, a very important, I would say, angle is the collaboration between the researchers and the pharmaceutical and technological companies. The researchers, physicians are present at every level of the development of new drugs and new technologies, at the level of planning, of designing drugs, at the level of bringing it from the laboratory bench to the bedside. This also obviously involves randomized clinical trials, researchers, driven studies, etc. And coming to the end of my part, I would like also to point to one more aspect of the collaboration between the technological companies and researchers and academic people. There is a large amount of clinical data, and the pharmaceutical technological companies, they allow the academic researchers to access this, to look at this, to make a research and to publish the studies. And I was personally involved in a couple of research papers based on the large data management, and this could have happened due to the collaboration with the pharmaceutical technological companies. This is a huge subject. I pointed just to a point that seemed important to me.
No, it's amazing to listen to this, and I love the combination of collaboration, competition, and you can see every single type of voice coming in this and making everybody go faster.
Absolutely.
So let's stay with the patients, and I'm going to come across to Marco now. So obviously, you speak for patients across multiple organizations. How do they make a difference in collaboration, and how can they collaborate? Because often they're quite small, resource-strapped organizations themselves. So how do they make a difference in collaboration?
Thanks. It's a complicated question, but because as a matter of fact, patients' organizations are struggling for surviving for many different reasons, and because it's getting more and more difficult to get funds, to get attention. And that is why also it's a pleasure to be here today and to have been given space as patient. And I thank also my colleague to some extent, because I'm not feeling as the panda in the group. No, it's good not to be alone. And it is indeed a bit peculiar. And I think that is the first step in the collaboration, that what patients can put in the circle. First, the idea that there is no difference between the patient and the other side of the table. There shouldn't be another side of the table, because as a matter of fact, at a point in your life, you all will be patient, you all will be user of the healthcare system. That is why we should cooperate positively, because it's about our lives. It's something that very often I don't understand, in certain meetings, when we forget to speak about patients, and when we forget to consider that we are all patients, or we will be patients, or we are relatives, parents, sons of patients. We all interact in these. The second part of what the patient can take is, sorry to say that, the sense of urgency, that sometimes we don't have the perception that it is felt. There are a lot of discussions, a lot of very interesting discussion, and we want to be competitive. We should understand what it means to be competitive, because one thing is to be competitive from the economic perspective, one thing is to be competitive from the cultural perspective, one other is to be competitive in granting the possibility of surviving to our citizens. And when I read the statistics and we get to the point that we have innovation, very good innovation, very high-level innovation, because Europe is creating high-level innovation. But sometimes this doesn't reach the patient. So what is this? It is the difference between innovation and wasting resources. Because if you create something great, a fantastic drug that works well and doesn't get to the patient in the right moment for the patient, that is not innovation. We have wasted billions of euros. And that is why it is important to have the patients on board, to remind that it is urgent to take certain decisions, that it is important also to have certain sets of rules for safety, but also at the end of the day that we are talking about life. Then, of course, we can take better evidence, we can grant the quality of the regulatory procedures, we can help increasing trust. That is another essential part of the story here, because vaccination hesitancy and so on, we try to explain, we discussed before, we need to have a dialogue with the citizens. But the problem is that the citizens very often, they are not in the position of understanding the disinvestment in the school systems It's a problem not only because in a few years we won't be able to create technical and scientific innovation because our children are not learning science in school, but our citizens, our friends, they don't understand the difference between science and fake news. That is scaring. And we are doing a huge part of our work, and we invest a lot of our resources in this kind of information. Talking about the recent innovation also in legislation, we are here also for explaining what is the unmet need. The concept of unmet need is central, no, in the new legislation. Who is going to define the unmet need? Believe me, it has to be a co-work there. Otherwise, once again, we will waste resources. We need to support, we need to be engaged in co-design trials, for example, and to promote, once again, patient centricity in healthcare. It's an idea that we are losing. It's an idea that will make us, otherwise, coming back 10, 15 years. We're talking about being competitive. There was one thing in which Europe was competitive, engaging with patients. That is where we were at the front line over the last 15 years, and this is disappearing. Talking about, and then it's my last point about the regulatory process, it's my big passion. No? Patients have been engaged more and more in the regulatory process within EMA. That has made EMA at the top level in this, in the world. All the other agencies were studying the case of EMA and how EMA was engaging with patients. And what we are doing, we are making a proposal in the Council for keeping away the voting rights of patients in these committees, or reducing the representation of patients in these committees. So basically, we had something in which we were the best in the world, and we are deciding to think about cutting it. But at the same time, we want to be competitive. It's a bit weird to me.
No, that's a perfect and extremely well-rounded
answer. I put it in a
answer.
software, yeah?
That's great. And I like the point about it needs to have an impact, because I always talk to our biotech innovators and go, you don't have a product until it makes a difference somewhere. You know, you can have all the startups you want, but if you don't actually deliver something, you haven't succeeded. But let's go move over to Andrew, because there's been some reference to, we've already talked about access to data, and ELIXIR has really enabled health innovation through collaboration around data. And make no mistake, data is the fuel that drives innovation. And Europe undervalues what data it has compared to other regions. And emerging regions like China know exactly how valuable data is and will do anything to get it. So how do you and ELIXIR enable healthcare innovation through access to data?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. So I think that's right. If innovation is the end point, that will require lots of different experts to be working together. So what are the best mechanisms to bring those experts together through collaborations? And so I can maybe give an example of a few of these, because I think there are different models that these collaborations take and that Europe needs to recognize going forward as well. So there are classic project-based collaborations that happen through EU-funded projects and programs. So our partners are involved in many IHI projects, like say Cynthia, for example, a current project which is generating synthetic data for AI, but also previously funded projects, which is about, for example, the FAIR Plus project that was trying to take data that was previously inside companies or not in the public domain and try to build a recipe that allowed those data to get deposited in the public domain. And I think these are really good mechanisms to make sure that academia and research infrastructures are building services and activities that are industry standard and fit for purpose, because it's really about understanding needs. And these collaborations are a good mechanism to do that. But there's obviously a challenge because these projects end as well. And so those project-based mechanisms for collaboration are really important, but are just one of the models that can be used. Another model is something I'd like to highlight called open targets. And so this is more around business models And it's a deeper public-private, longer-term collaboration where the European Bioinformatics Institute and the Sanger Institute, both based in Cambridge, have a deep collaboration and receive funding through many pharmaceutical companies like GSK, Pfizer. And so this is a really innovative way of thinking through how industry can also support the public resources, but how they can get access to the expertise as well. And so all of the collaboration leads to data that go into a public platform for target validation, so other scientists can access that. And industry as a funder isn't buying access to data. What they're doing is making contributions so the data go in the public domain, but also working closely with those database developers as well. So I think that's a really nice model that can be useful to explore. And then another example would be AlphaFold. So you've probably all heard of this from the Nobel Prize. So this would be more of a collaboration that takes place on top of a database. And so it's really important to try and understand the shape, 3D structure of proteins, how they fold. And this is a very difficult challenge to be able to understand. And so DeepMind chose this problem to solve because it was of biological importance, trying to understand how it functions, how diseases develop, and how to develop drugs to treat that, but also because there was high quality data available through a database called PDBE, the Protein Data Bank for Europe. So it's actually a global collaboration. And so for over 14 years, there's been richly curated and high quality data on protein structures that have been fed into this database, and that has given the training data for the large language models that DeepMind has been able to develop as well. And so across all of these three examples, you can see how these innovations have happened on top of the public data. And if I may just give one other different type of example, because for a digital infrastructure, when we think of collaborations, we think of two or more partners working together on a project. I think we also need to recognize for Europe's public databases, these users are coming from all over the world, industry, academia, and they rely on this data to be able to generate new knowledge and new products. And so sometimes they build their own pipelines. And so Europe actually has a very rich ecosystem of software companies, and they will ingest data from the public domain, and then they will improve it, they will develop new interfaces, they will mix it with proprietary data from pharmaceutical companies, and then develop new products on top of it as well. And so that's not a traditional collaboration form, because actually they're building pipelines to pull data in from the public domain, but there's still innovation that happens here. And so we've surveyed 50 SMEs in Europe that are active in the software space, and one of the feedbacks was that 76% of them felt that they couldn't offer their software products if it wasn't for the public domain data that they built their services on top of. So that's just an idea of these different models of collaboration. But the main point here is that it's really important for Europe to be able to have effective data underneath that, because that's where innovation comes from.
No, that's great. And in fact, AlphaFold was one of the technologies, or the breakthroughs nominated in our 25th anniversary at Europa Bio to say, name the key breakthroughs for biotech in the last 25 years. And they weren't all just the end products. They were mostly the platforms that enabled this first thing to be developed. And I take it back a little bit, saying that Europe doesn't appreciate the full value of its data, because I think that's not entirely true. But I think that where we've built ourselves immense strength is in the fact that we have created regulation in which data can be used, good data can be accessed and used safely, because you need to have trust and governance in data if you are going to make valuable products from it. Yeah. But I'm going to go to Thierry next, because you come from engineering, in silico, so you essentially cover all sectors and bring together, the things that make them work. So can you explain how your background in it, your engineering experience and your in silico work enables collaboration or delivers collaboration?
Yes, and thank you for the question. We as engineers, we love equation. So with the equation, make us a little bit more comfortable to understand and even being able to predict what's going on. For example, they've been using this kind of equation in the automotive industry, aeronautic industry, nuclear industry for 60, 70 years for now. For the last 30 years, I've seen that people in the healthcare, both pharmaceutical and medical device, start using a simulation on the research and development side to better understand what's going on and all the drugs or the medical device will interact with the human body. But during all this time, people were telling us, okay, well, no, I don't buy it, because the human body is so complex that there is no way to use equation to do that. Well, by the way, did you look at the airplane, the complexity of the airplane, and even the material, which is composite material with different layers and so on, that's very complex as well. And on the other hand, when people are asking us, okay, but can you model the human body down to the DNA level? No, not for the next 10, 20 years from now, but do we need that? Let me take an example, going back to Marco as well, fantastic example, I believe, from a pediatric cardiovascular surgeon, Dr. David Jorgensen, at Boston Children's Hospital. There are several similar surgeons in Europe as well. This guy has created, during the last 6 years, more than 1,000 computer models of children for which life was at stake. They might be dying within a year or two. And over there, he was analyzing what's going on in their cardiovascular system. You may say, okay, but using 4D MRI, you can do that. Yes, but he was very interested to find out, okay, what can I do as a surgeon to modify the arteries position, so on, where the blood is flowing. By doing this kind of simulation, more than 1,000 different patients, he was able to find a good solution for each of these patients. But even better than that, that's where I'm coming back to you. He went to the patient, both the children and the parent, and he said, okay, well, look at that. I can model the blood flow. That's the result of our equation. I can model the blood flow of what's going on in your case. There is a very nice case where the blood flow was going in one lung, but not on the two lungs. He said, okay, but I will make some small modification, and you can see that the blood flow will go in both lungs right now. And therefore, that means that he was saying this young lady of 11 years old, now you will be able to run with your friends and all these kind of things. These people understand this point. They understand the value, possibly the children even better than the parents, because we make it affordable. We make it that this is something that they can understand. This were not equation anymore. That's the perfect example where a simplified model had a big impact. Because as you say, we don't want to create a kind of very complex model and so on. We want to take care of the patient, and here saving the life of the different patient. And we've got several patient organizations. I've got a good discussion with Martin yesterday evening, yelling, why can we not use that? The industry is also yelling, why can we not do the computer model that we are using for research and development for regulatory approval purposes? One of the points is that we are lagging behind a little bit in Europe. We need to make sure that we have the proper regulation. Now, I've understood the previous speaker to say, okay, well, we don't need more regulation, and maybe the word regulation is not the right word. We need guidelines. Can we use this kind of computer model, which is validated extensively? And if we can use this computer model, what is the guidance to validate the model and to report this kind of result? And if we can do that, this is opening the door. Because this morning we were talking about clinical trial. We need to defend the position of Europe. Fully agree on that. But let's not fight what is from the past. Let's consider in situ clinical trial. Before going to a few patients on the clinical trial, we can test tens of thousands of different patients to find out what's going on, and then after that, we might do some kind of clinical trial to refine that. Well, unfortunately, UK is moving in this direction. UK, they are trying to justify Brexit, maybe using healthcare, and they're trying to build right now around Manchester a big center for in situ clinical trial. If we are only focusing ourselves on the clinical trial, we are missing part of the game. That's how we can bring all this kind of engineering situation, focusing on the patient first and the clinician as well, because one of the key elements is that we as engineers, we should stop talking about equation. We need to learn the language of the patient, the clinician, the regulator, the policy maker. And at that time, we can communicate all together.
Thank you so much. And you are completely right. The word in my head was critical mass when you're talking about this. Europe has so much in it. And we don't need to have necessarily more. We just need to wire up what we already have better. And so it's incredibly interesting. So I'm going to go finally to Magda with the European Innovation, EIT. You have an extremely unique role across the European landscape, and this is a great way to mobilize collaboration. Can you explain how you source innovation and integrate it into healthcare development?
Yes, but before I go there, I maybe reflect a little bit about what is happening or what we've heard already in the morning. So I'm a lawyer by training as well, so I very often feel in this life sciences field as a stranger in New York, to cite a song. I'm really passionate about people, and this is why I'm here. But it is a very specific environment, right? And I have a feeling when I was sitting in the audience this morning, we have all the elements. We understand what is not working. We understand what needs to be done. There's alignment between all the stakeholders about the why. There are some, I think, conversations to be held about what, but I think where we are not discussing, and maybe where the tension is hidden, is about the how. So I think that we've been spending over the past years, and coming from the startup perspective and working with entrepreneurs and so on, and we've heard an entrepreneur in the morning. We see frustration. We see, there's a lot of pressure on the entrepreneurs. So actually, everyone striving towards delivering innovation and speeding up the time to the clinical value of the innovation and of the solutions. But we have been focusing a lot, I think, because of the startups. We've heard about the startups and scale-up strategy. We are focusing a lot about building launch pads, but maybe not too much on the landing pods. So I think that one of the biggest barriers that I see time after time, there's a lot of tech push and market pull conversations and so on, and of course scientists are excited about expanding the human knowledge about the things, making the breakthroughs, etc. But there is a healthcare system that is barely breathing, that needs to carry the weight of actually delivering the innovations to the patients. So I think we're dealing with an ecosystem that is moving at completely different speeds. And I think, in the fireside chat just before our panel, we've heard the humility of an entrepreneur saying, let's admit to each other that we don't know what the future holds. That 7 years is extremely a long time. On the other hand, we hear we need stability, we need predictability when it comes to funding, when it comes to programs and frameworks and regulation, because this is also, of course, fostering the collaboration as well. But we need to find a middle way to strike the good balance between the stability and solutions and regulations that are enabling this fast pace pivoting. I mean, we've heard a lot of keywords. I think the pivots, because innovation is not, let's say, a predictable process. So just to finish off, because I think we're very often using collaboration, we're just throwing this around, and innovation as well. Just to make it, a little distinction, there is this quote of one of the co-founders of 3M, that when you take money and you generate knowledge, this is research. And when you take knowledge and you generate money, this is innovation, right? So let's just make it clear. Let's focus on this other part of the spectrum, because we are absolutely amazing in generating knowledge, but then how do we apply it and how we actually bring the clinical value we all just confirmed that we want. So let's discuss about the hows, because this is, when we need to meet the other perspective and the reality of the regulator, the entrepreneur, the scientist, and the clinician, the patient.
And EIT?
Oh, and then EIT. Well, absolutely. Well, EIT is of course one of the examples, and I think it is. I know there's a lot of conversations right now how to structure this at different levels and so on. And I think I am in love with the problem. I'm not in love with the solution. Okay. EIT, I think what it offers and has an absolutely fantastic framework. It was this long-term thinking. So creating an environment where people can really build trust and collaboration and relationships with people, so that, you know, when we would measure the health of the ecosystem after a while, I think it should be measured with how easily people can simply pick up the phone and call Kate or Jason or whomever to speak about an idea or to speak about the problem, to source information, right? So, yeah, so I think this is the long-term thinking. I agree, one-time-off projects, they are not necessarily yielding the results. Yes, again, let's fall in love with the problem, not with the concrete solutions, and let's solve it once and for all.
Thanks. I love your reference to the ability to absorb innovation, because it's something that we think about. You think, something's made it to market. It's been through the EMA. Now everybody is cured. But of course, until the patient gains access to it, and not just one patient, but lots of patients. You know, Europe's often quite good at treating like a person, but in fact, what it needs to treat is all the people with that particular need. So I think that's a really great point. So we have got 11 minutes before you guys get to eat your sandwiches. So what we are going to do is have a couple of minutes now for each of our speakers to talk about what is key to the success of your collaborations and what Europe should do. And I would bear in mind the interesting times in which we live and what we might have to think about a little bit harder than we did, 3 months ago. So I go back to Maciej.
So I would like first to start from defining what is a success for me. My background is medicine. So for me, a success is to see the improvement in the novel therapies and technologies that my patients have an access to see that this access is fast and wide. And I think that in terms of innovation, yes, we have success stories on the European continent. For example, Novo Pharmaceutical Company. This is a success story. But the fact is that, at least in my opinion, Europe is losing a competition or has a problem with the competition with the US, with the Asian countries, particularly China. So the question is what to do to survive this competition. And I will not be probably an original one, but I think that there are two key elements. One is a better funding. So in this country, we were a basket case in 80s. I remember Lech Wałęsa going to Japan in 1980, and he returned and said, okay, we'll have a second Japan in Poland. And this was considered to be an untasty, inappropriate joke at that time. But this year we caught actually Japan in many, according to some methodologies, the GDP equalized. But we are not a success story in this sense, in terms of innovation. And the question is, why is that? We didn't develop a global mark over the last 30 years, in spite of the success story. And I think that one of the answers is that the funding is not an appropriate one. We spent 5% for the army, and I understand the reason for that, but we spent 1% for research. So I see a link between lack of progress in terms of innovation and the funding that we have in this country. And the second key element, in my opinion, are the regulations. We need to somehow deregulate some law in Europe to survive this competition with the US. I remember when I was in States, this is an old experience in 90s, and I can compare this with the way the research is performed here in Europe, at least in Poland. And these are two different universes. When a boss had a grant in US, it was up to him to decide what kind of equipment he's going to buy. And we have a large bureaucratic process here in Europe. This is time-consuming, this is costly. The same as with paying the salaries from the grant. And I think that this has to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a topic we can all talk about more, but we're going to go straight back to Marco and go, Marco, what has been key to successful collaboration for patients, and where do you want Europe to go next?
Well, engaging with patients will be essential. We need to consider that we are European and we have been building on values that are essential part of our culture. And this is something we should not forget. We should build on this, because that is our specificity, that is what makes us different, and that is where we have to start from. Because we know how to make business with ethics, because we believe in ethics, even when it is a cost, because it is a cost. We give value to the human being, and so we need to keep on reminding ourselves why we are doing this, because we are doing this for us. So we need to consider this as a long-term investment on us that will pay back in different levels, because having an efficient industry will also pay back on our economy, for sure. But it's not my job to work on that. My job is to remind you that we are all patients and we need this innovation. And I would love to start by increasing the number of innovative medicine that reach the patients. You know, we have studies on that. We have the numbers. If we consider the innovative medicine that have been approved between 2020 and 2023, and we see how many have reached the patients in 2025, it's 46%. It means that we have wasted 54% on the investment on that. Then, just to make it a bit of fun, the fact that this index is called the weight is fantastic, in my opinion. Because we want to get more efficient, and we created an index that say, no, wait, and then we will see what. But seriously, life science shall be health-focused and patient-centered. That is the takeaway message on my side. I'm happy this conversation is happening in a university, because it is through creating universities centuries ago that Europe have accelerated and has led the world at a certain point. We keep on saying that at the point of our history, we started building cathedrals. We stopped doing this. But we need also to be aware of the fact that we don't have to build cathedrals in the desert. We need to build what people really need.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just busy writing down your excellent quote there. So that's great. So I'm going to go back to Thierry. What was key to success for your collaboration, and what should Europe do next?
Well, for me, what is very key to success is to make sure that we are talking. It's not because Marco is a lawyer or Maciej is a physician and I'm an engineer that we should not talk together. Of course, we have different language. We need to learn to trust each other, to be open, for me to listen carefully to what both of them are saying in such a way that we can help the patient. If we are doing that, that will be the first step. I agree, funding is very important and so on. This will come next. And if we can collaborate like that, there could be a lot of funding coming from the industry. When I was talking about in situ clinical trial, that will save a lot of money to the industry, a lot of money that could be reinvested in a different way. On the other hand, the other things that I would very much appreciate is that there are a lot of very good intention everywhere, but there is a lack of coordination. I would be a little bit careful with deregulation, because we don't want to be Europe becoming the Far West here. We've got a lot of problems in the US like that. But indeed, having some guidance, having Europe to coordinate the different things that we are doing. And for example, André Rees was inviting me and the Avicenna Alliance first to the INDRF 2 years ago. We are not now making some very good progress, but we need some help in order to make sure that Europe is shining over there. So I will need some contact from you to do this kind of thing. I'm taking this opportunity. If we are coordinating our effort and we are talking to each other, I think that Europe will be the strong leader. And I will finish by saying, okay, well, 2 months ago, I was starting my meeting with the FDA again, after 2-3 months where they were not even allowed to meet. And I've got these few people from the FDA telling me about the big uncertainty that they've got in US. And I was telling them, okay, but you know, you were leading the charge for the last 10 years, and we really appreciate that. Now that you are facing uncertainty, maybe for 4 years, Europe will pick up the ball. We'll do credit to you, and we will push it further. And I can tell you that they really appreciate the fact that we were not laughing at them. To the contrary, we were recognizing them, and we were taking the leadership for that. That's what we need to do, and I do hope that Europe will push us stronger, because, by the way, we are talking a lot, but we should act, and that would be very important.
Thanks very much. And I want to pick up on your point on the regulation. Indeed, when we look at biotechnology, our members, our industry members do not want deregulation. They appreciate the high regulatory standards that Europe have. It's the streamlining, the ability to move through the regulatory pathway. That's the key thing. And that's totally in our hands to do. And it is already underway with the Biotech and Biomanufacturing Communication, the Biotech Act that will come. We have momentum, and I think people are super aware of it now, which is very good. But I go back to Andrew and go, right, your key to successful collaboration and where Europe goes next.
I would say it probably boils down to trust. So I think for anyone to innovate on top of public data, they need to have confidence in the quality of it. They need to ensure it's going to be around. They need to have confidence that it's going to be around for a long time if they're going to develop pipelines and products and services on top of it. So I would say that trust in the quality of that data is really, really important. And then if we look at going forward, so you've rightly pointed out some of the global headwinds that we have right now. So if we look at some of the big European databases, quite often they do receive funding from the US, and scientists all around the world use them. And so I think this is an opportunity now for Europe to be at the forefront of open science, and to project the benefits of this and be a leader. And I think that's one thing I would really like going forward, to recognize the value of open data and realize that it is important to advocate for this. And I think one thing that we need to do is make sure that across all of the new strategies and programs that are being developed, so Irene nicely described all of the new strategies under development as part of the life science strategy, but also research infrastructures, ERA, AI. We need to make sure that there's good alignment across that enables the use of those infrastructures, because whether it's investments in AI factories or whether it's the new the data spaces, we really need to make sure that we avoid fragmentation and that we can reuse resources when we've got them.
Oh, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much. And I agree with literally everything that you said. But last but very much not least, Magda, key for collaborative success, where do we go next?
Right, I hate to stand between all of us and the lunch, so I'm going to make it very short. But Andrew, you just mentioned the trust, and I think there is a very nice framework for a triangle of trust, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but essentially when we talk of trust, it usually happens when 3 elements are in place. Is we believe that the person that talks to us cares about us, that this person makes sense in our judgment of the situation, and the third part, or the third piece of the triangle, is that this person actually does what it says. Okay, so it's a reliability aspect of it, and I think that in this all of those 3 elements, they are absolutely essential to allow for this communication and for this fruitful conversations and so on, when we all feel that we are important to the other party that we speak to, that this person is credible and it is making sense. So I think where we need to go as Europe collectively, I mean, first of all, we need to believe in Europe, and I think we mentioned very often here, it's 27 different markets. It's not a Commission's, let's say, responsibility in the health space. I think there's a lot of demands from the sector for a little bit more, but we often forget that Europe is a collection of the member states, and the member states still have a very important voice in the regulatory process and in deciding about what kind of budgets are we talking and what are the priorities, etc. So I think we do have not only a duty to, let's say, expect a lot or talk about, oh, this is over-regulated or under-regulated, but we need to also do the work at home, because I'm going to say it again, I don't hear tension between us. I very much hear an alignment. So the question is, what is the missing piece? Like, why we cannot move at this very much desired faster speed? So I'm going to leave you with that for lunch.
Thank you. Perfect to digest. So I will say an amazing thank you to my panel, who are astonishingly talented. And you lunch, so thank you so much.
Please stay with us. Please stay with us. I know that keywords has already been told, lunch and sandwiches, but I've got some important information for you before we will start the lunch. Firstly, I would like to thank all of the panelists. Please give him a huge applause once again. Maciej, Małecki, Thierry, Marschall, Andrew Smith, Magdalena, Krakowiak, Marco, Greco, thank you for being with us. Oh, selfie time. I don't know if you're aware, at Cannes Festival, which starts yesterday, there is no permission for selfies at the red carpet. We are slightly different. But I'm not sure if she hears me, but I would like to thank really Claire for her energy as a moderator. Once again, bravo.